that never gets boring to me. I don't know if it never gets boring to me. It's so cool. So today is October 29th, James, and we are super excited for our push talk today. We have, I don't know, like I hate me. Yeah, we have the honorable, because whether or not you're in position tonight, the fact that you sacrifice, I personally believe the fact that you sacrifice your time and willingness to be a part of the whole movement or the conversation is important. But judicial candidate running for Superior Court judge in Cobb County, Tanesha Marshall, nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And yes, it's my hope that I will soon be the Honorable Tanesha Marshall in May of 2022. So it's been, the campaign kicked off a couple months ago, but it's still been an incredible experience.
So let's just kick right in, right? Let's just jump right into it. Who is Tanesha Marshall? For people who don't know who you are, tell us about your background, where you come from, and how you even came up to the choice of run for this position.
So my background is started in the South. So my family, my mother and father were both from the South, from Alabama and Georgia, but when they married, moved up north. So I spent half my childhood in Detroit, and that's with the other half of my childhood in Indiana. And kind of a very diverse difference between the two. In Detroit, it was many more races and much more diversity of background. And then we moved to Indiana, we were the only black family in the entire county. Mm. And so, but because I had very strong parents, who just instilled in us, the morals and values, and just knowing that we could do anything, and to be able to overcome different challenges, and and always be able to know where our roots were, no matter where we were at. And so after my childhood in Indiana, I went to undergrad in Missouri and went to law school in Ohio, but throughout that time I kept visiting my family in the South. And so I always knew that ultimately I wanted to come down south. And so after law school I came down, took the bar, met my husband, and I've been here for the last 20 years. And I really enjoyed it. Now, Tanesha, the person on why I wanted to be a judge, ever since I was probably in 4th grade, I wanted to be a judge. And that is because I saw a judge as someone that made decisions. Whenever people would talk about laws and things not being right, you'd always hear about ultimately the judge decided it. Mm-hmm. Whether it was a Supreme Court judge, the judge decided it. And so I said to myself, I want to be that person. I want to be able to make a difference and have an impact. And so ironically, people don't know, I became a lawyer to become a judge. I had to look into what is the background of a judge, and found out that was a legal career. And so from that moment on, that I set my eyes on it, my sights on it. And then after law school, and when I came down here, I was fortunate enough to work for a Superior Court judge in Cobb County, the same one who's retiring, whose seat I'm running for. And in working for him, it really just affirmed all of my previous aspirations and thoughts and goals of what I wanted to do. But I will tell you that at that time, I knew that I still needed to get more experience to be the best judge. And so with that, I was able to get into other areas of law, and so and state and federal experience. So for the last 20 years, I really feel like I've been prepping myself for this. Didn't know how it was going to come. You never know sometimes how things are going to come to you, but this one I think has really always just been there, and now I'm ready for it. So for the last 20 years, I have done federal and state law. I have had the opportunity to do family law and criminal law, employment law, labor law, real estate law, and contracts, as well as I'm also the primary ethics official, which I think is very important, especially for someone that hosts behind the bench. In addition to that, I've been able to be diverse in that I have been a prosecutor, I've prosecuted federal cases, I've defended cases, I've been a mediator in family court, I have taught civil law courses as an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. In addition to working for the Judge Lanoy with Cobb Superior Court, I've also been able to be the manager, the chief regional counsel, and the manager for the eastern half of the U.S. for a federal agency. And so having all of those different perspectives, and in addition to that, when I say perspectives, I'm a mother of 3 sons. And so I've been in the county for 20 years. So all of that together, I believe, has really just made me in a position to be balanced. And I use the theme, Marshall makes sense, for my campaign, because I really believe that, you know, a judge needs to have legal sense, they need to have common sense, and they need to have a sense of community.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm that right now is the time for me to be able to share that back with Cobb County.
I love it. So one of the things that for me is extremely important, and we kind of hit on this earlier today, is that, like, for me, I believe the whole judicial system has become so rubber stamped. So you look at the police department submits a case to the DA's office. The DA's office doesn't investigate it, they just stamp it and they go full-fledged with it based upon just the facts of what the police department gives them. That's not the way it was supposed to be, right? The system was not designed that way. Everybody was supposed to have a check and balance. Police departments investigate a crime, they send it to the DA's office. They should investigate again before they pursue it. And we see that a lot, definitely with police cases, you know, a grand jury indictment. If a regular person gets indicted, it moves through it way quicker than if a police officer gets indicted. And the police officer is able to actually sit in their indictment and testify in their indictment, right? How do we get the system to back where people understand that it's not about as sitting as a judge, because I know a lot of people who are judges, right? And some of them have been past DAs and some of them have been past attorneys, right? Where they don't look across the bench and say, oh, that's my friend standing over there at the DA's office, or that's my old department standing over there at the DA's office. How do we take that biasness out of it to where it gets back to being just fact-based prosecution? And at the same time, like you stated, you used the perfect word, balanced prosecution.
And as I was going to say, Sean, that's really what I want to be able to give is a balanced prosecution. You know, it's funny because a lot of judicial candidates will say, well, I'm going to be fair. And that's assumed.
Right.
You know, judges are supposed to be fair. But I think the problem is that how we look at fairness. If your bubble is so small, you may think that if you got $2, giving each person $1 is fair.
Right.
But if you don't realize the other person only had $5 in their pocket, or that this individual has been working for free for the last 2 years, then maybe it isn't fair to split it that way. So you have to know the cases, you have to know the community. And so when you say sitting behind the bench, I believe that being a judge extends so much further than behind the bench.
Right.
And so I really think that ways to make it balanced would be education, as well as equity and efficiency. And so education in that I really want to be able to educate people before they even get to that point. I think proactively letting people know there's been a loss of trust in our judicial system. And a lot of that is because what people don't know what's going on, or they feel as though something's being held back from them. And so I'd like to be able to just give that education. And one thing about Superior Court, unlike other courts, is it's a court of equity. People don't realize that. So felonies and divorces and civil law matters and issues over title of land, but it's also court of equity, meaning that judges have the opportunity to not only look at common law, but also be able to apply reason, you know, and what's fair, to kind of make a decision based on what's right for this case. And so as a judge, I want to make sure that behind the bench, I'm not the expert. That's not my role.
Right.
You know, my role is to keep my eyes, my ears, my mind, and my judicial conscience open at all times to treat each case for what it is right there, and not make pre-decisions about what I feel more so than what I've heard and what makes sense and what's right. And then from a situation from the situation of the efficiency, working with the federal government, another thing that we have that sometimes I think rushes things through is backlog, right? So there was a backlog before the pandemic and there's a backlog now. And it's not just Cobb County. But with that, sometimes that gets people pushing things through.
Right.
Maybe we cut corners because we're trying to get matters, but these are people's lives. You know, I have heard stories from individuals where they have sat in probation for 3 or 4, not probation, just sat in jail for 3 or 4 years waiting for a decision that they may very well, you know, not even be charged with, or may be able to walk after hearing that decision. And so for efficiency, working with the federal government, and my role now as a Chief Regional Counsel, I have been a part of the creation and implementation, as well as the evaluation of several case management systems. So I think that the judge has to be able to manage off the bench as well. Because if people can see efficiency, then I think that eliminates the need to cut these corners. If people can see education, then I think that will eliminate this loss of trust. And the balance is not just with the judge, the balance is with the people as well.
Right.
So, I mean, that's really my overall goal, is just to make it an overall balance. I'll leave you with this particular topic. Is just that I've been reading, and so I read somewhere that over 75% of the people that have civil matters, like I said, there's a lot of family and domestic matters that come to Superior Court. Of those 75%, of those cases, 75%, this is nationwide and in similar courts, do not have representation. And to be frank, one, there's not enough attorneys to represent everybody, and people don't have enough money.
Right.
And so there's that balance, and I think we'd be surprised just if people knew how much easier, one, the case would be that they're in, and two, I think it could decrease some of the cases that we have. I've said it before, but I'll say it again on this podcast. Everyone that breaks the law is not broken.
Right.
And so if we just can, like I said, get that education to get people maybe to learn and understand, then they'll be able to contribute back. They'll be able to maybe prevent from making the same mistakes, as well as, like I said, have some trust in our system.
One of the things I talk to people about a lot is making sure, like, my personal belief, and the reason why Black Push was even founded, was off the principle that if a judge has decided that a person needs another opportunity in society, so they get sentenced to 5 years and they're 25, they're obviously not going to, prayerfully they're not going to die before they make it out, right? If a judge has decided that a person is able to come back into society, we have to have a place for them to come back to. What does restorative justice look like for you when it comes down to what your role will be on the bench?
In regards to being able to not just make sure that I'm making fair decisions, but also have people able to contribute back.
Right.
I think that we've been put people in a place, right? You have to be able to put them in their best, to be able to be in the best foot, to be able to excel or be able to succeed. I'll say from where they're at. But again, I'll use the word balance probably quite often, because you balance with accountability.
Right.
Because you do have to make sure that, when you look at that case, it may require a severe punishment, but that doesn't mean, again, that person's inevitably broken and can't be restored. So I think that we have to, one, balance that accountability, but then two, make sure that there's those avenues there. Now, Cobb County, I would say, they've got the accountability courts with the mental health and the drug abuse to be able to address that, and I think that that's critical. I think that just locking somebody up isn't necessarily going to always deter the behavior and or make them a better person when they get out. And I know this isn't necessarily on the bench, but for instance, the sheriff right now, they're really pushing training and trying to give people the education while they're inside. While they're being detained or whether in jail. So I think that restorative justice is you've got to be able to not only give the person the opportunity, but make sure that they are put on the right path that's right for them. Does that make sense? Because everybody's restorative justice is different.
It's different, yeah. Yeah, but we have to have programs in place.
Right.
It makes no sense to lock a person up for 5 years and there's nothing that they can obtain while they're there. And then they go back out to the system, and now, prior to them going in, they didn't have a record, and now whatever drove them to do whatever they did. And I'm not talking about crazy stuff. I'm talking about like a person goes and rob or do something like that, or drug charges, right? We know that drug charges have been something that's very sticky, because around 62%, I think I just read the other day, of most drug cases are like marijuana cases, and we know marijuana is, depending on where you're at, it means something different for you.
Right.
And those are things, and I don't know how we give restorative justice to those people. Definitely, when you think about places like California, New York, Washington, where they legalized the marijuana, and now people are still sitting in jail today from marijuana cases that is now legal in those states. So I think we have to figure out a way to make justice restorative for those kind of people, or for people who, and I get it, right? So from a physical standpoint, we as people look at certain things and be like, okay, that's pretty rough. From a spiritual standpoint, and that's part of who we are, like I'm learning to try to see sin as sin, right? That God doesn't differentiate between what's the stream and how we say this is the stream and this is not. God doesn't do it that way. And we have to, I think as a society, we have to be willing to give people that second opportunity if it's given to them. If a person sentenced to 10 years for whatever the charge may be, if somebody has determined that it's okay for them to come back to society at some point, we have to have a society in which they're able to come back to. There was a guy, I think in Detroit has spent like 50 years in prison. Finally had got out, and his family had bought him like a little house or whatever they call it thing that rolls around and moves. Mobile home. There we go. They bought him a mobile home and everything. Got him a job, everything. The guy literally went into a gas station, took a pack of gum, and told the guy, "I'm taking this. Call the police." Literally. And when he got back to the judge like, "Really? Like, why are you back here?" And he was like, "Because I don't want to be out of society. Like, I'm not made for that." And that's what I mean by restorative justice. Accountability, needed. If a person does something wrong, they have to be held accountable. But we also have to make sure that we're doing our research to make sure that the people who we're charging, because I've told people all the time, just because a person gets an indictment doesn't mean guilt, right? Just because a person gets a guilty sentence doesn't mean guilt. We see cases like that. I think there's a case recently of a guy in, is it Kansas, that he literally, the DA's office had come out and said, like, this person's not guilty. And the only person who could release him from jail, from prison, is the governor. And the governor's like, I don't want to touch it. But yet he's releasing people who are friends to his and, signing off on all these things. So we have to make sure that justice is fair. And I think I think the system has just been bogged down by it's you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so, like you said, it's so much of a backlog that we're not taking time to actually remember that it's people's lives. And I think that's extremely important.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. And, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't have friends and family that have been involved and had situations like that. And it's such an impact. I mean, a couple of things you said made me think about. One, we not only want to put people in a position to be able to help them, but they have to be able to help themselves too. You got those people that you only can help those that want to help themselves, but those that do want to turn over a new leaf, those that do want to, learn from this and be able to be productive, they've got families. I think that we need to put those programs in place. But the other thing about it too, just kind of going back to how it affects a person, there's 18-year-olds, that they're charged, except maybe it's a charge and it's mitigated down, but they still have that arrest on their record. They still, or and I was talking with a group, and there was an 18-year-old. He had been arrested, and he had been detained and at the time it was a juvenile center, then they moved him to a jail. But he'd been there for months, like maybe 6 or 7 months before he was able to have a hearing and be released. Even that time affects you. I think that we have to understand that people just even sitting in that time frame, when eventually they may get out, all of that impacts you. I mean, this is now a 18-year-old that those memories are going to stick with them. So you want to try to minimize that as much as you can, and you also want to kind of, get away from that institutionalized mindset. Mm-hmm. The guy with the pack of gum, that they're not thinking this has got to be my new world. Like, either I can't come back from this. But there is no easy solution, because you touched on something, Sean. It's a system. So we all got to play our part. So I think the judges, we have to play our part to know that we're kind of like one of the last stops, so we have to be able to really listen. And that's why I say, I'm not an expert. I cannot, sit behind the bench. I cannot go into a case thinking I know because of what I heard yesterday or because of the cases that I had. I have got to look at the full picture of this case in and of itself and be able to really use that to make sure that I'm making a decision that is going to be better for everyone. I mean, it may not be an easy decision. It may not make everybody happy. But a decision that ultimately is going to put that individual in a place to not do it again or to be able to succeed afterwards. Or, again, just and not have a loss of trust in our system.
All right. It sounds like education all around is definitely necessary. So my question would be, what advice would you give Cobb County youth or youth altogether if they wanted to pursue and be successful in a career of law?
I think the sky's the limit for our youth. I've spoken to elementary kids, middle school, high school, even college students. Even I work with our federal agency now when we bring a child to work day on things like that. I think that I'll say I'll start with the children of color. I think a lot of our Black and brown youth believe that certain that certain careers are outside their scope, or it's, you know, that's too big of a dream. If I want to be a lawyer, if I want to be a judge, if I want to be, you know, these positions that they have only seen people that don't look like them in. And so I would say to that person, you know, pursue that goal. You know, get involved, talk to people that know. That's one thing that I don't think that we do enough of. We don't reach back enough. You know, I don't think that we reach back and give our youth a bridge that we may not have had, to let them know, hey, here's my hand, I'll help you. It might have been a little rough for me, but I've already paved a little bit of a road, so let me help you out. So when I go to those schools and I see, especially like, you know, girls and stuff, they'll say, oh, you know, how did you become a lawyer? You know, what did you do? And I'll say, come speak with me. Come have lunch with me. And that's the same. I've got like some mentors in college now. Just having those conversations to know this isn't like some superhero. Right. Anybody can do this. I'm not this, you know, because I don't have, you know, any special powers of how I got here. It just takes hard work, dedication, and don't let anyone talk you out of what you can't do. Right. I mean, even today, I've had people try to talk me out of doing things, and you have got to stand by, you know, your gut, your aspirations, and your goals, and they don't look like anybody else's.
That's right.
And as my friend says, there's always more than one way to get to Rome. They don't have to go the same path either. You can choose your own path sometimes and have the same result.
Yes. That's what I have for now. But thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that, I mean, I appreciate you coming on today, right? I think it's huge that people get to know who we are voting for. And I think the mindset of people, right? I think that's extremely important. So if people want to know more about how they can find out information about you, if they want to donate, how can they do any of that information?
So if you want to donate, help out with a campaign, have any signs, anything like that, you can go to my website at www.TaneshaMarshall.com. You can follow me on Facebook. I'm on social media at #Tanesha4Judge. So on Instagram and Twitter. So I would definitely love all the support. Anything helps, any and everything. But definitely reach out, give me a call. I've told others, and I still stand by this. I'll talk to groups, big or small. One thing that I'm really pushing on that sense of community is I want to be able to let people know that all of Cobb matters.
Right.
You know, and so people that don't vote because they think that their vote doesn't matter. And so all of Cobb matters, and I really want to impress that upon anybody that meets me, that I really want to represent all of Cobb.
And it's funny because I had my best friend, she never puts up a yard sign in her yard, and I was down in Florida recently, and I was like, why did you put his yard sign up? And her response blew me, but her response was literally, she said, he came and knocked on the door. And that captivated me because like this person doesn't even care about politics like that to do that. So, Vice, keep knocking on those doors, and I think that makes a huge difference.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think definitely people see you, and I'm definitely involved in the community. One thing I'll say that people don't know, going back to the aspirations, you know, some people you don't look like what you've been through. You know, people say you don't look like what you've been through. So even while I had a full ride to law school, even before then, when I was all A student and everything else, I detasseled corn in cornfields for 6 years, and I worked. I had like 3 or 4 jobs, and still was involved in all these clubs and activities. I worked on an assembly line, to try and get more money when I was in law school, because I don't think that any one person should be above another. If that makes sense. You know, we all have something to give, and so I think when knocking on somebody's door, letting them know I'm just like you. It's just, this is what I'm doing. This is the path that I've chosen, but it doesn't mean that your path is less valuable. We have to be able to give value to people, let them know that they're valuable.
We appreciate you coming on today, and look to continue the conversation. Once again, we had Mrs. Marshall for today, but hopefully by May, never know what May will bring. We wish you much success and much safety on your journey, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
No, thank both of you. I appreciate it.